Hi guys, and welcome to the Is It Worth It for the Dicker Max, the Tier 6 German Premium TD. For a long time it was the only German Premium TD available in the game. In fact, that's when I purchased it. There were no other Premium TDs available for the Germans way back when I got the Dicker Max. But since then, the Jagdtiger 88 was the next Premium TD to be introduced, followed by the E25. So there are quite a few choices when it comes to German premium TDs, and perhaps the Dicker Max has fallen out of favour. The E25 is a tank that's a lot of fun to play and can perform well on pretty much any map and in any scenario. The Tiger 88 is a really good crew trainer and a really good money earner, and a lot of people seem to like it as a Tier 8 premium. And the Dicker Max has sort of slowly faded into obscurity. They're quite rare. You don't see very many Dicker Maxes in game, and it's a shame because I do like the Dicker Max. The Dicker Max can be purchased from the tech tree for 3,200 gold, or it could be purchased from the gift shop for just over 13 euros. I imagine it's about the same in dollars. That makes it one of the cheapest Tier 6 premium tanks you can buy. All the other Tier 6 premiums are slightly more expensive, but it's not a very expensive tank. And the question we're going to be answering is this tank worth 3,200 gold? Well, let's talk about the history of the tank. The Dicker Max, in other words, Fat Max in German, was basically designed not as a tank destroyer, but as a bunker buster. It was designed in early 1941 for use against the Maginot Line in the invasion of France. However, as any history buff will tell you, the Maginot Line was easily overcome by the German blitzkrieg moving through Belgium, and it never saw any action on the Western Front against the very defenses it was supposed to knock out. So it was repurposed, it was redesigned as a tank destroyer, and it was sent over to the Eastern Front. Only 2 prototypes were ever built, and they did see action, but not a lot of it. And like most prototypes, it had some issues. It had some small engine problems, but the main issues this tank faced was it has, in real life and in the game, very poor gun arc. In fact, it's very poor. Literally, we're looking at this much gun arc. It is worse than most Russian tanks. So yes, in real life that caused a problem because you had to constantly move the hull of the tank to get it on target in real life, and it was impractical because the Eastern Front, the terrain was very rough, and the tank was pretty heavy, so it was pretty difficult to constantly have to adjust this tank in order to make up for its poor gun arc. The other major issue the Dicker Max had in real life, and again it's kind of represented in the game, is the muzzle on the gun on the Dicker Max. It forced a lot of the explosion, the shell expansion down, and basically what that meant was when the Dicker Max fired its gun, it threw up a huge cloud of debris, which not only revealed its position to the enemy, but it also meant that the gunners and the commander in the Dicker Max couldn't actually see whether or not they hit the target. The debris and smoke were so bad that they actually had to have spotters a couple of 100 meters out to either side of the Dicker Max in order to relay back to the commander whether or not the target they were aiming at had actually been hit. So it was pretty impractical. In-game, they have kind of mirrored this problem by making the camo rating on this tank, even though it's pretty good when not firing its gun, and while it is stationary and even while moving it's not bad, but on firing this gun, this has a very poor camo rating. So the Dicker Max can get detected pretty easily as soon as it fires its gun. It has a much worse camo rating when firing than most of the other TDs in the game, and I guess it's kind of a nod to historical accuracy. The Dicker Max doesn't get special matchmaking. It will see Tier 7s and Tier 8s just like any other German TD. The Dicker Max doesn't have a lot of competition as a Tier 6 Premium TD. In fact, there's only one other Tier 6 Premium TD in the game, and that is the Su-100Y for the Russians. Now, I would love to compare these two tanks directly, but they are so different. There is so little these two tanks TDs have in common that really it's a very difficult thing to compare them. So I'm just going to fly through this. Basically, the Su-100Y has 700 hit points compared to the 550 hit points of the Dicker Max. However, the Su-100Y has very poor camo rating, and the Dicker Max has quite good camo rating. The Su-100Y has no gun depression. Dicker Max has amazing gun depression. Su-100Y weighs more, it has more engine power, but yet it is slower. The Dicker Max is not a fast tank, but the top speed on the Su-100Y is slower. However, it accelerates to that top speed quicker than the Dicker Max does. The traverse speed on the Dicker Max is faster. The Su-100Y has next to no armor, but yet it has more armor than the Dicker Max, so that's saying a lot. Dicker Max has no armor. The alpha damage and the guns on these two tanks couldn't be more different either. The Su-100Y has incredibly high alpha damage, really high penetration, but slow rate of fire. The Dicker Max alpha damage is actually very good, but definitely not good compared to the Su-100Y. However, its rate of fire is much faster, and it has slightly less penetration. The gun traverse on the two tanks are very similar, and the view range on the Dicker Max is much better. The Dicker Max has incredible view range, great view range, and the signal range is much better on the Dicker Max too. But these two tanks play so differently. I suppose the one thing they do have in common is that neither of these tanks wants to get spotted, because when they get spotted they die very quickly. A better comparison for the Dicker Max would actually be the German TDs in the regular tech tree. So that would be the Nashorn, which I do currently own and is fully upgraded, and the Jagdpanzer IV, which I don't own and is not upgraded, so I'm going to be comparing it against the stock Jagdpanzer IV. And the reason that this comparison is actually better than the comparison against the Su-100Y is because the Dicker Max doesn't get special matchmaking. We'll see exactly the same tanks as the Nashorn or the Jagdpanzer IV, and is very similar in stats. In fact, all these TDs are very similar across the board. Again, the Dicker Max gets less hit points than the other two tanks. However, all three tanks weigh roughly the same. The engine power is very similar on all three tanks. Again, that's the stock Jagdpanzer IV I'm talking about. But even still, the stock Jagdpanzer IV does get a more powerful engine. The Nashorn's engine is a little bit better. All three TDs, however, have exactly the same top speed limit. So what this means is that even though they all travel at the same top speed, the other two tanks accelerate up to 40 kilometers an hour a little bit faster. The traverse speed on all three tanks is very similar. In fact, the Jagdpanzer IV's is the worst, but it's very similar to the Nashorn's. We'll talk about the gun later. You'll see that the gun traverse speed again is identical across the three tanks. However, the Dicker Max does get an advantage when it comes to view range. The view range on the Dicker Max is very good. The view range on the Nashorn is very good, but the Dicker Max has it just beaten at 400 meters compared to 390. Both of these tanks are much better than the Jagdpanzer IV. And then the signal range on the Dicker Max is very good at 620 meters, which is much better than the upgraded radio on the Nashorn at 550, and I'm not quite sure what the signal range on a fully upgraded Jagdpanzer IV is, but it's a lot better than the stock Jagdpanzer IV. So all of these tanks are very similar, and they play very similarly to each other. The big difference is the gun. The first difference you'll notice when we compare the guns is that the Cannon 18 on the Dicker Max is actually a 105mm compared to 88mm on the other two tanks. The Nashorn has a pretty good rate of fire. The rate of fire on the Jagdpanzer IV is very good. Penetration-wise, the Dickermax slots right in between the other two tanks. The Nashorn is very good penetration for a tier 6 with 203mm, and the Jagdpanzer IV has a very, very disappointing 132. However, 169mm of penetration on the Dickermax is perfectly usable. It may not be as good as the Nashorns, but I have noticed very, very few problems penetrating even tier 8 tanks with 169mm of penetration. You've got to remember that the Dickermax is a tier 6 tank, and there are some tier 8s that have roughly about 169mm of penetration. I'm looking at maybe the T69, the KV5, and there are a lot of tier 8 premiums that only have 175mm of penetration. So even on paper, even though the penetration doesn't look great, it is fine. You can penetrate a lot of tier 8s with absolutely no problems, and I have to fire very, very little premium ammo in the Dickermax. I can usually aim and hit weak spots on most tanks, and I can penetrate most tanks that are lower than tier 8. The alpha damage is where the major difference comes in for these guns. The Dickermax has 300 alpha damage, which is significantly higher than the other two tanks. You can roll incredibly high with this gun. Fortunately, you can also roll fairly low, but it really does pack a punch. The accuracy lets this gun down a little bit, and this tank is a little bit eccentric. I do love the Dickermax, but the gun on it reminds me a lot of the BL-10 on the ISU and the Object 704. When the gun wants to behave, it is fantastic, but sometimes the gun just does not want to behave, and you'll be missing shots that, especially at long range, even though you are fully aimed in, the shot just goes everywhere. On the other hand, sometimes you'll get into those games where the shots go exactly where you want them to go, and yeah, the Dickermax is just one of those tanks. Sometimes the gun behaves, sometimes it doesn't, but it is a lot of fun. The aim time is not great compared to the other two tanks, but it's still pretty good at 2.3. When it comes to the gun, there's a few other things I need to talk about that aren't shown on the stats. The first one is the gun arc on the Dickermax is very, very narrow. I've already mentioned that. That narrow gun arc, even though it can be a pain in the butt sometimes, it isn't really as noticeable on the Dickermax as it might be on some Russian TDs or any other TDs that have very, very narrow gun arcs, simply because the Dickermax needs to be played really, really passively, and that means you are usually quite far back from the front line, and that gives you plenty of time to aim and plenty of time to get your gun on target. The other thing that the stats don't show is the amazing gun depression. For a long time, the Dickermax had the best gun depression in the game. It's very, very hard to show in the garage, so I'll just show it in a replay instead. But the gun depression is incredibly good on this tank, and it's one of the main ways of playing it. If you can get a rise and stay behind a rise in the Dickermax, you could have amazing games. However, the downside is, while it has an absolutely amazing gun depression, it has really, really poor gun elevation. If you're below a target, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to be able to get your gun up and hit them unless you find a rise. So, yes, for every positive, there's a negative. Another thing that needs to be mentioned is the ammo costs. The ammo for the Dickermax is not cheap. It costs 600 credits every time you pull the trigger, which is pretty expensive for standard AP rounds, especially on a premium tank. It also costs 4,400 credits, or 11 gold, for premium rounds. Now, I only carry 4 premium rounds on this tank, and I very, very rarely have to fire them. But even the high explosive is more expensive than the AP at 650 credits, so it's not a cheap tank when it comes to ammo costs. If you were watching closely, you would have also noticed that the tank doesn't carry a lot of ammo. It only has 26 shells, so I've gone for 20 regular AP, 4 APCR, and 2 HE, but it only has 26 shots, so you can't really spam shots in this tank. You really, really need to aim and hit the targets you're shooting at if you're going to get the most out of this tank. However, if you're careful, 26 shots will get you through most games. So let's see this gun and some other features of this tank in action. We've gotten ourselves into a tier 7 game on El Haluf, and let's just go. So this replay is almost like an overview game. There's a lot of strengths, a lot of weaknesses for the Dicker Max shown in this game. But primarily, I'm just focused on the gun. As you can see, I'm not slow. Not the quickest, but I'm not slow. I'm able to get into position relatively quickly. And I'm going to be using my excellent camo value and my gun depression here. But I can't advance because an enemy AMX-12T has moved across the valley. And no matter how good the camo value on this tank is, it's not good enough to poke this ridge as long as he's sitting there. If I get spotted, I'm going to take fire from the other side of the map. Thankfully our PZ-4H takes him out, and now it is safe to advance. So I'm poking, and I'm going to sit here, let my binocs kick in, and see if we spot anything. And a KV-1S has been spotted. I don't swing around in time to managed to get a shot. So again, I'm going to sit here, let my binocs kick in. And I'm using this great view range. And I reckon I'm fairly safe. Unless I fire my gun, I'm confident my camo rating is going to keep me safe. So I go for a snapshot on the Chinu before being fully aimed, just so I could possibly hit him before he gets into cover. And then I notice that we're under pressure on the other side of the map. Bringy's under pressure, I need to move up. So I've got two tier 7 TDs here, going for the weak spot on the AT-15A, but that 169mm don't go through. SU-122-44, his I'm shooting down on his sloped armor, so I thought that shot might have gone in. And that shot goes directly over the tank, but I have not been spotted. Waiting for this reload, and unfortunately he gets into cover. Now right beside me, Astur Emil has decided to take up exactly the same position. He wants to do exactly what I'm doing. There's a T-29 over here. And I get a shot into the T-150. So fully aimed, and the shot goes over to the right and only manages to track the T-150. So at long distances, sometimes the gun can let you down. It's like using a BL-10 sometimes. Look at that shot. The shot went right to the edge of my reticule, over to the right. Went nowhere near the center. And again, that shot went slightly high, but the tank was retreating. So Hellcat gets back into cover, but Astur Emil has taken a shot. He's been tracked. I haven't been spotted, even though I'm firing my gun. Astur Emil has. And there you go. Astur Emil takes another big hit from something. Unfortunately, he's pushing into me. I go for a blind shot, and thinking that maybe the Hellcat had poked the bush again. But gun has been letting me down here. SU-152 gets spotted across the way. Aim carefully. Shot goes slightly to the left, but still manages to pen. Go for another blind shot just in case. And T-34 is near the cap. I advance to get my gun on target, but the Astur Emil takes him out. But you can see how, there we go. See that? I was on a slight backward rise and I could not get my gun up. Gun elevation on the tank is horrible. Simply just a couple of inches forward meant I could not get my gun up on target. So I've got to reverse. And I'm keeping an eye on the minimap. Notice our KV-1S is taking fire, so I'm wondering if I can support him. There's a KV-2 down here as well. But unfortunately, no shots. Can't save the KV-1 or the KV-1S. Chinu is reversing. I'm aimed fully, and the shot goes low and to the left of where I aimed it. But I did manage to track him, and that shot goes a little bit high, but still goes roughly where I aimed it. So the gun works really, really well, but it just can be flaming frustrating sometimes. But again, because of my camo rating, and there's my view range kicking in, I've just spotted the KV-2. Narrow gun arc, I readjust, aim again, get a shot into the KV-2, set him on fire. I pull back just in case I was spotted, but there's no return fire. KV-2's view range is quite poor. T-25-2 takes him out. So still an M4 and an SU-122-44 down here, but the SU-122-44 has advanced. I'm at the end of my gun arc. Again, I've got to readjust, aim, 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 lead the target, and get a shot in for another kill. So I know that's definitely gotten me spotted, so I've pulled back, but I can be a little bit aggressive here because Sneaking Badger has taken out the enemy arty. Someone just took a blind shot at me. M4 is dead. And we're winning quite comfortably. It's 13-11. There's a Hellcat down here. SU-152 is still over the valley. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit. T-25-2 is advancing on the Hellcat. At this point, Sneaking is asking me where exactly the SU-152 is, and I said I doubt he's moved. He's probably still there. And he fires a blind arty shot and hits the SU. It tells me he's just behind these bushes. So I've turned around, I'm shooting blind at the bushes, and of course just as I fire, the Hellcat appears and retreats. So I'm down to 10 rounds left. Even though I haven't really been spamming, I've gotten through 15 shots already. So I'm setting up, waiting for the Hellcat to reappear. Sturamil has moved up beside me, and Sneaky's decided to go for a TD run in his arty. So there's my view range. My view range is kicked in. I spotted the Hellcat. Aim and shoot. Sometimes the gun works and sometimes it doesn't. So one enemy tank left. 4 of us. Go for another blind shot. And that obviously hit near him because someone returned fire. So I fire another blind shot into the bush. Sneaky's going forward. I decide to move forward. Track myself for no damage. And there's the SU. He pulls back before I can get a shot. But I don't have the gun elevation. I need to get onto a forward rise. He's taking damage. And the engine power, I just can't get up the rise quickly enough to get my gun on target. So that replay wasn't that great. It was me playing the Dickermax passively, which is something you need to do in this tank in order to get the best out of it. But it did show you some really, really nice gun depression, showed you how poor the gun elevation was, showed you how inaccurate the gun can be sometimes, but also how good it can be sometimes when it decides to behave. The Dickermax is all about using the strengths of the tank and using the terrain to stay as hidden as possible. Like for example in this game on Pearl River. Unfortunately in this game the enemy tanks advance up the 2 line rather too aggressively, and they get too close. They've taken out our T-32, and yes, this Tiger is way too close. However, I'm going to use this amazing gun depression. Oh, and he's got backup from a super Pershing, so I poke, get a shot into his lower glacis. I pull back before he can return fire, and I decide to poke again, but unfortunately I missed that shot. He managed to get a shot in straight into the top of my tank. I hadn't dropped off radar like I thought I had, so I've waited till I've dropped off radar, and I'm going to poke again. Need to get my gun down. Miss my shot on the super Pershing. Tiger bounces. Get another shot into the Tiger. And yeah, I die pretty soon after this because they just keep advancing and I don't have the speed to run away. Here's another example on Muravanka. And again, I'm going to be using my gun depression and these bushes for cover. It's a tier 8 game, and the Dicker Max does see tier 8s. No special matchmaking for it, unfortunately. But unfortunately, my team don't advance other than that IS-3. They don't advance very far up the map. The enemy team advance very aggressively. I get a kill on the Lux. Using the bushes, using this great gun depression. STA-1 is advancing. Aim and shoot. Get 299 damage done into the STA-1. I don't have Sixth Sense on the tank, so I'm not sure if I've been spotted. Or at least I don't think I have in this game. I'm not sure which crew. I have so many German TD crews, I'm not sure which one's in the tank. But again, I'm using this gun depression, using the terrain to my advantage. T-150 in the middle, get another shot in on him. And I'm sorry for playing this at times too, but I've got a lot of footage to get through, and I really don't like the reviews running all that quickly. But you can see how quickly you can deal out damage. I'm up to 1,000 damage already, and you really need to use the terrain. You really need to use bushes to keep you safe. You don't have the hit points and you don't have the armor to afford getting spotted or shot at. What the Dicker Max allows you to do is take up unconventional positions, unusual positions for a TD. We're here on Kamarin, and I'm working my way along the A line, but I'm not planning to go over to the 90 lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up just about here. So again, I can use my gun depression. No idea what enemy RT is doing on the island, but I'm not complaining. So I'll be playing a lot of this in times too, but I'm taking up an unconventional position you'd expect to see a TD take up. I'm not getting shots. Unfortunately, a VK and a Churchill decide to sit at the back of the map. And no shots on the Covenanter before he dies. But I have not been spotted. Unfortunately, that was a Hellcat shot on either the VK or the Churchill that hits me by accident. Hellcat still shooting at the VK and the Churchill. The VK decides to reverse and take out whatever cover's available. Never a smart idea, but then the Hellcat goes down. So all these tanks are around me, they're getting shot at, and I really don't want to be here. I really wish this VK and Churchill had just gone over to the 90 lines. Bringy is the only one over there. But again, I'm using this great gun depression. And I managed to bounce on the side of the Churchill. He's still advancing. I'm trying to track him, but don't manage it. Do manage to hit him. So there's an Arl. I can move forward, get my gun down. get a shot into the top of his turret, which was a little bit lucky. Shot went a little bit high. He gets tracked. And we get to take him out. So very, very unconventional position for a TD. I would have, as I say, much preferred to have been working here alone without the VK and the Churchill. But we're dominating the enemy team. The score is 8-0. So now it's time to relocate. And again, I'm not going to cross the flat ground. That's not something I want to do. What I want to do is I want to use the ridges and the hills. Advance up. Bringy's moving forward. A PZ3. And I take him out for kill number 2. But again, I'm not exposing much of my tank. No shots on that Type 58. So again, I can use this ridge. I can get my gun down on target. And get more shots in. He gets taken out. But now I'm in a perfect position. Just 2 enemy RT left. I can afford to move up, sit here, wait for RT to be spotted. Hummel is... shoot before being fully aimed, but thankfully the shot flies fairly straight. And last enemy RT spotted, and the shot goes very, very wide because I hadn't fully aimed. So the Dicker Max is all about taking up those positions that will allow you to get shots at the enemy tanks from areas they normally wouldn't get shot at from. Use the terrain to your advantage, use your amazing gun depression, and you can deal quite a lot of damage and get quite a lot of kills. Unfortunately, it means playing quite passively, and that's not a style of play a lot of players are comfortable with. Let's talk about the crew. And the Dicker Max is a pretty good crew trainer. It has a commander, a gunner, a driver, radio operator, and 1 loader. And for a long, long time, it was the only premium TD available for the Germans. As you can see, I've got my Nashorn crew in here, and they match up perfectly. When you come to later or end of tier German TDs, you'll find that you are missing a loader. You will need another loader. The E25 has been introduced since, and isn't, even though it's a great tank, it's a fun tank to play, it's not as good a crew trainer. It only has 4 crew slots. It's missing, again, that second loader and a radio operator. The Jagdtiger 88 is probably the best crew trainer for the German TDs. It matches well with the end of tier German TDs, and it has both loaders. However, the Dicker Max is a pretty good crew trainer, and it's pretty cheap compared to the other 2. Let's talk about equipment, and there are a lot of equipment choices for the Dicker Max, but really because of the way the tank is designed and the way it plays, there are very, very few viable ones. Toolbox. This tank doesn't have very many hit points. In fact, it has very, very low hit points for a tier 6. Again, if you're not going to survive long enough if you're taking fire in order to make use of a toolbox. To fuel tank durability, again, the hit points on the tank really, really don't warrant increasing the fuel tank. Again, you can get set on fire if you do get shot in the lower glacis, but I don't think a fuel tank is worth it. Enhanced torsion bars, again, complete waste of time on the tank due to the way it plays. You really, really aren't going to get tracked very much in this tank. You'll die very, very quickly upon being spotted. An enhanced gun laying drive to increase your aiming speed is possible. It's a viable choice. However, 2.3 aiming time is not bad, and it matches fine with the rate of fire of just over 6 rounds a minute. Coated optics is another viable choice, but I don't think it's a good one for this tank. You already have 400 meters of view range. Coated optics will take you up to 440 meters of view range, but this is a tank where you're going to be stationary a lot in. It needs to be played very, very passively. You're not going to be moving around, and even if you are moving around, 400 meters view range is good, and I don't think coated optics are a better choice than the binocs. Binocs will take you up to that all-important 440 to 450 meters view range, and because you're going to be playing this tank quite passively, you're going to be sniping towards the back of the map. I think binocs are a far, far better choice. You've got to keep this tank stationary, you've got to keep this tank hidden, and therefore the binocs definitely, I think, are a better choice. Medium caliber gun rammer to increase your DPM. The DPM on this tank is very, very good. Increasing it by 10% is a must. If you've got a good crew in this tank, you can deal out damage very, very quickly, as you're going to see later. Medium spall liner. This is an open top vehicle, so HE is going to mess you up. You've got very, very poor armor. Anything firing HE is going to kill you very, very quickly, so I don't think a medium spall liner is going to be worth it. Wet ammo rack, again, I don't think you have the hit points. You die so quickly in this tank. I don't think improving your ammo rack durability is going to save you very much. And a camo net is the final piece of equipment, and I do recommend a camo net on this tank. The camo on the tank is very, very good in the first place, but unfortunately one of the hidden stats is when you fire your gun, it has a very, very poor camo rating on firing its gun. So the chances of being spotted after firing are pretty high. A camo net definitely is a must for this tank. You have to remain hidden. So it's the time of the review for the overview game, a game where I try and show you as many strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm reviewing in one replay. In this one we are on Corellia. I am platooned with Bringy and Sneaking Badger, and it's a pretty good matchup. It's an all tier 6 game. Here we go. So while it's not the most maneuverable of TDs, it does the job. I hear a lot of people criticizing the Dicker Max for its poor maneuverability, but other than towards the end of games, as you're going to see, I really haven't had any issues with it. So what I want to do is I want to get into a hold down position, use my great gun depression, and then put my DPM to action. And I'm hoping the enemy tanks have advanced up the 0 line in strength. What I really, really want to see is all the enemy heavies progressing right down here in front of me. So I'm using a bush for cover, I'm using my gun depression, and I'm pre-aiming the corner. So they've got a Hellcat on the hill already. Martyr 3 appears, and shot goes exactly where I wanted to for the first kill of the game. KV-1S has appeared, and oh, look at all these targets! And unfortunately the KV-1S pulls back just as I fire. I figure the KV-2 is a better target. And 336 damage into the side of the KV-2. He's coming back for more. I fire a blind shot. No idea whether or not that went in. We'll see when he reappears, see what sort of hit points he's on. And I really, yeah, I hit him. That second shot went in. He's down to 227 hit points. I go for a shot in the turret of the KV-1S. It goes in. And I'm not spotted. And I go for another shot. KV-1S is firing to where he thinks I am. So I go for a blind shot in the Matilda. He was 100% health. Don't know if that shot went in. Yeah, he's still on 100% health, so it may have hit another tank. So I lead the target, get another shot into the Matilda. KV-1S is back. Not much to shoot at. And the shot goes pretty much exactly where I wanted it to. Hits the KV-1S's cupola for kill number 2. I'm up to 1500 damage, and a lot of the blind shots I fired have gone in. So I bounce on the front of an Arl. Not sure if I can pen his side, so I decide to work on the front again. And there we go. Second shot does go in for kill number 3. 1707 damage, and that's just where I get to use the terrain to my advantage. I get to use the amazing DPM. And we're coming down to one of the weak points of the tank, which is cleaning up at the end of games. Unfortunately, even though I'm fairly mobile, I'm often getting into games where I'm just not quick enough to take advantage of extra XP and extra damage towards the end of games. Because you've got to play so far back and so passively, by the time it takes you to reach surviving enemy tanks. They've all died. But in this case, I managed to get another kill on the KV-2. So we're up to 4 kills. 1900 damage. Game is only 4 minutes. It's not even 4 minutes old here. But you can see how quickly you can dish out damage. Just one enemy tank left, and I'm never going to have the speed to kill him. So that particular game was a first-class mastery with high caliber and sniper. You'll see we finished top on XP with 848, but this is the main thing you needed to look at. 2,528 damage. So my blind shots did hit, they did go in. So this is an amazing DPM machine when it gets into a position where it can put its gun in action. It is a little bit frustrating when you do get into a game where the enemy tanks don't come to you, but other than that, in the right situation at the right time, the Dicker Max really performs well. So to sum up, is the Dicker Max worth it? Is it worth 3,200 gold? Well, this is just my opinion, but I think the Dicker Max is one of those few tanks in game that is just oozing character. I love how unique the Dicker Max is. It used to be more unique before the introduction of the second line of German TDs. It had that amazing gun depression. It was an open-topped German TD, but the second line of German TDs that have been added to the game kind of have diluted how special the Dicker Max once was. In fact, the Sturmil is probably its big brother and plays very similarly to it. But having said that, I do love the fact it's still a pretty rare tank. You don't see very many of them on the battlefield. It looks cool and it just has great character. The Dicker Max has a lot of positives. It's got that amazing gun depression, allowing you to use terrain features better than most of the other tanks in the game. It has a great camo rating, except when firing that gun. It has really high alpha damage for its tier and reasonably good penetration. The DPM on the tank is very good, and you can tear through and really deal out a lot of damage very quickly. Its reload accuracy and aim time, while not the best, aren't bad. And unfortunately, you can have some of those games where the RNG goes against you, but when the RNG is with you, this gun is a joy to fire. It has really good view range at 400 meters, meaning that unlike a lot of other TDs, you are not reliant on your team to spot for you. It's nice when they do, but you can spot your own targets and you can take out your own targets, especially if you're using binocs or maybe coated optics. Its signal range is very good. It's a pretty quick tank at 40 kilometers an hour. It takes a while to get to that speed, but it's pretty quick. The traverse speed isn't great, but again, it's serviceable. It's okay, so the tank is pretty maneuverable, but may not be the best, but it's definitely not a negative. It's a really good crew trainer. Having said that, the tank also has a lot of negatives. It's open top, so HE is going to absolutely destroy you. It doesn't have a lot of hit points. In fact, it's got the least hit points of any of the tier 6 TDs, in-game or premium. It doesn't have a lot of armor, so you're not going to be bouncing very many shots in the Dicker Max. The camo rating when firing your gun is very poor, so you really do need to make sure that you're in a position where enemy tanks can't return fire, or that you're using bushes and trees to fire through so that they don't spot you when you fire your gun. And speaking of the gun, like I say, sometimes it just doesn't work. Some games it's fantastic, sometimes the gun just refuses to hit whatever you're aiming at. It has really poor gun elevation, and it has a really poor gun arc. It doesn't carry a lot of ammo, and what ammo it does carry is expensive. But having said that, you can still make money in the Dicker Max. It is a good money earner. And because it's a good money earner, because it's a good crew trainer, because it's quite rare, because its playstyle is very unique, I'm going to say that the Dicker Max is worth it. I really do like the Dicker Max. In fact, doing this review, I was asking myself, why the heck don't I play this tank more? And the beautiful thing about the Dicker Max is it's one of those tanks that shows up in specials again and again and again. If you're lucky enough to pick this tank up on discount from the tech tree, or maybe as part of a bundle or discount from the gift shop, you're not going to regret it. And while the tank needs to be played quite passively, and it's probably not everyone's favourite style of play, it does what it does really, really well. So if you don't mind playing passively, if you don't mind playing TDs, if you don't mind sniping, then this is a perfect addition to your garage. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.